You've found the light, but why do you still feel lost? You searched for so long. Between silent tears and unanswered prayers, you screamed to the universe, "Show me the way." And then one day, the light appeared. But now, she confuses you. It shines, yes, but it doesn't heat up. It illuminates, but does not guide. Rumi wrote, "The light enters where you were hurt." Oh, but what if the wound has closed? What if what was pain is now just an echo, a silent void that watches you in the dark? You thought finding the light would be the end of the darkness. But on the contrary, that's where it all began. Because no one told you that true spiritual awakening is silent. It's lonely. It's like walking in an open field, with no ground. You feel everything, but you understand almost nothing, and it breaks you in a different way. You went through the pain, survived abandonment, rebuilt your self-esteem, read all the books, lit candles, performed rituals, meditated until you lost track of time, and yet, there are nights when it all comes back, not like before, but as an absence. You feel like you're in a place between what is no longer there and what has not yet arrived, as if his soul was moving, but with no clear destination. That's why, even after you find the light, you still feel lost. Because the light that arrives too soon blinds, and the healing that is not deep becomes a mask. Rumi said, "Don't settle for stories of how things happen to others. Unveil your own legend." But what do you do when your legend seems confusing? When does the sacred mix with the void? Maybe no one prepared you for this place, this middle ground, that space between the old pain and the new awareness, where there are no more screams, but there is no peace either. You are not alone in this. The light has found you, yes, but maybe you haven't learned to walk with it yet. Maybe your soul is asking for silence. Maybe what you feel is no longer pain nor joy, but the birth of a new perception, one that no longer seeks easy answers, one who no longer wants to go back to being who she was. The question is no longer, where is the light? But yes, who am I now that the light has come? And that's what we need to talk about. Because maybe you've never put into words what you're experiencing right now. Maybe you thought it was just you, that no one else would feel this kind of disconnect after so much healing. But what if this emptiness is a sign? What if the feeling of being lost is the last stage before you finally find yourself? Right here in the comments, "I have found the light, but I am still searching for myself." Say it as an act of courage, as a reminder that your soul is still alive, even in the quiet days. You are not the only one in this place. And if this video has already spoken to your soul so far, leave your like, not as an automatic gesture, but as a symbol that something inside you is waking up, that there is truth here, even if it hurts. Subscribe too, because this journey doesn't end with just one video. She is made of pieces, fragments of pain, flashes of lucidity, and sacred silences. And here, you will find a space for all of this. Now, let's go deeper, because what you are feeling has a root, an invisible origin, and only by understanding this origin will you be able to leave this place where the light has arrived but still doesn't warm you. Let's go. Your soul is ready. Have you ever wondered why, even after awakening, you feel emptier than before? Why, after so much healing, does it feel like something is still missing? It's as if the pain has faded, but left an echo, an uncomfortable silence. And this silence isn't light. It weighs. It weighs because it carries questions you can no longer ignore. It weighs because you look into your own soul and realize that, even after all the effort, even after walking through the shadows, reading books, undergoing therapy, seeking spirituality, realigning chakras, and lighting candles, there's still a place inside you that doesn't fit. It's no longer a screaming pain. It's a whisper, a discomfort that has no name, but that accompanies you in your most vulnerable moments. Like that early morning when you couldn't sleep, or that conversation that seemed normal, but suddenly you felt like you didn't belong. It's an absence, a non-place, as if your soul were suspended between what was and what is not yet. You try to explain, but words fail you. Because how can you explain this feeling of being at peace and at the same time restless, of having light all around but darkness within, of having overcome people, situations, old versions of yourself, but still feeling like something essential is missing? It's as if you've cleaned the entire house but the smell of pain still lingers in the walls. as if your heart has stopped bleeding, but the scar throbs every time the world falls silent, and no one talks about it. No one prepares you for what happens after healing. Everyone tells you the light will come, that you'll feel better, that spiritual awakening is the beginning of a new life. But what happens when this new life has no direction, when it's vast, yet lonely, when your consciousness expands so much that you can no longer fit in anywhere? This is the invisible problem, the place many reach, but few have the courage to admit, because there's a silent pressure to appear enlightened, to appear resolved, to smile with an aligned soul and balanced chakras, but inside, you're alone, and it's a different loneliness than you felt before. Before, it was the absence of others. Now, it's the absence of meaning, real meaning, something that transcends what you've already learned. You look back and no longer recognize yourself. Old pains no longer define you, but neither have they been replaced by certainty. It's as if you're between lives, as if something has died inside you, and something new is being born, but still formless, nameless, and without ground. You feel like you're in transition, but you don't know where. And this can make you doubt yourself. It can make you think you've regressed, that you've failed, that everything you've built spiritually was in vain. But the truth is different. The truth is that you are exactly where you should be, because this emptiness, this non-place, this silence that seems to consume you, is part of the process. It's the pause between one song and the next. It's the moment when the universe teaches you to listen to what isn't said, to feel what isn't visible, to trust, even when nothing seems to make sense. Rumi wrote, "When the soul lies on that grass, the world is full of conversation." And perhaps that's what you haven't realized yet, that there's a conversation happening within your emptiness, a sacred language that translates not into words but into sensations, intuitions, gentle premonitions that something is forming in the invisible. You're not stagnant, you're gestating, but this spiritual gestation isn't comfortable. It demands surrender, detachment from your old identity. It demands that you abandon yourself so you can find yourself again. And it hurts. It hurts because the ego tries to survive. It tries to understand. It tries to bring order to the chaos. But the soul doesn't explain itself. It feels. And you feel that something inside you is changing even if you don't know what. That's why you still feel lost, even after finding the light. Because finding the light isn't the end of the road. It's the beginning of surrender, of true surrender, of looking within and accepting that there are times when not even the light is enough, that there are nights when the sacred doesn't respond. And that's okay, because in this silence, in this not knowing, a new wisdom is born. One that isn't learned with ready-made phrases but with the simple act of continuing to breathe, even when the soul is exhausted. And maybe that's what you need right now. Not more answers, but permission. Permission to feel this way, to accept the emptiness, to admit that yes, you feel lost. But that doesn't mean failure. It just means you've reached a point in your journey where the map no longer serves you, and you need to walk by intuition. The invisible problem is this: you've awakened, but no one has taught you how to live with the light. Because light demands presence, and presence at times is painful, because it reveals everything that hasn't yet been said, everything that hasn't yet been felt. It doesn't mask, it exposes. And that's why, even after awakening, you may feel even more exposed, more vulnerable, more sensitive. But there's beauty in that too. There's beauty in not knowing, in not fitting in not being certain. Because it's in that space that something new can emerge, not from without, but from within. Something that isn't an answer, but a reconnection. If this silence you carry has a name, if this emptiness resonates within you, write in the comments, "My soul is gestating something that doesn't yet have a name." Let this phrase be your act of courage, because admitting it is already part of the healing, and you are not alone. The truth is, many confuse awakening with arrival, as if the simple act of becoming internally enlightened, of touching one's own essence, were the end of a long journey. But it isn't. Awakening isn't the end of the road. It's the door that opens onto an even deeper path. It's the breaking of a veil that reveals other veils. It's when you finally see your soul and are startled by what it still holds. Rumi said, "What you seek is also seeking you. But what if what you found didn't bring you peace? What if the light that reached you only revealed the true extent of your own darkness? This is the point no one tells you, because it's nice to talk about light, healing, and expanding consciousness. But what happens when you realize that old patterns, open wounds, and attachments disguised as spirituality still reside within you? And what do you do when you discover that, despite everything you've learned, you're still trying to control what should be surrendered? Still trying to understand what can only be felt? Still trying to organize pain, when what it wants is to be transmuted? The spiritual root of this feeling of emptiness after awakening lies precisely there. It lies in the conflict between the soul that wants to flow and the ego that still wants to dominate the process. Because the spiritualized ego is as controlling as the wounded ego. It just dresses better. It talks beautifully, quotes Rumi, lights incense, claims to understand impermanence. But deep down, it demands answers. It wants the map. It wants the manual. It wants to feel safe. But the soul doesn't function with safety. The soul wants truth. It wants surrender. It wants you to throw yourself into it even without grounding, even without knowing what comes next. And that's why you feel this way now, lost, even after everything. Because you expected clarity, but received silence. You expected peace, but received the raw truth. You expected lightness, but received awareness. And awareness hurts, because it reveals, it unmasks. It shows you that many of your advances were just adaptations, that you're still trying to deserve love, that you're still afraid of being abandoned, that you still want to prove your worth even if silently. The spiritual root of your discomfort isn't the absence of light. It's your attempt to make that light follow a script. And light, when it's true, destroys scripts. It burns away the old so the new can be born. But the new doesn't come immediately. Between destruction and rebirth, there's the void. And that's where you are now. This emptiness isn't punishment. It's a break. It's the soul's time. A time that doesn't follow clocks, doesn't meet expectations. It's a time of transformation. And spiritual transformation doesn't happen in a straight line. It's cyclical. It's a spiral. It comes and goes, rises and falls, taking you to places within yourself you thought you'd already overcome. And this can be confusing, because you feel like you're regressing, but in fact, you're deepening. You're revisiting the same pains with a new awareness. And this awareness demands more truth, more courage, more presence. Rumi wrote, "You have to keep breaking your heart until it opens." This might sound harsh, but it's also liberating, because it means there's nothing wrong with you. That this feeling of being lost, of no longer knowing who you are, of no longer finding comfort even in spirituality, is part of the path. It's the heart opening beyond the surface. It's the soul breaking through old structures. It's life taking away your crutches so you can learn to walk on your own 2 feet. Have you ever noticed how pain changes after awakening? Before, it was anger, sadness, loneliness. Now, it's as if everything is calm on the outside, but turbulent on the inside, as if no one else sees your struggle, because now it happens silently, on the invisible plane, in the place where the masks have fallen and only what is true remains. And being true is tiring. It demands a nakedness of the soul that hurts. That takes you out of your comfort zone. That makes you look at yourself in the mirror and ask, am I willing to go all the way with this? And therein lies another spiritual root, the fear of total surrender. Because deep down, you still want control. You want to know what will happen. You want to ensure everything works out. But the soul doesn't negotiate. It wants radical surrender. It wants you to say yes, without guarantees. It wants you to trust, even when everything seems uncertain. And that's scary, because trusting at this level requires faith, and true faith only arises when everything rational has already crumbled. Maybe that's why you're here now, because part of you knows that something needs to die inside you, so that something new can be born. And this grief is real. It's emotional. It's spiritual. You're mourning who you were, for everything you believed in, for everything that didn't return after the light arrived. But this grief is sacred. It prepares the ground. It clears the rubble. It creates space. You feel like you no longer belong to anything you once were, but you still don't know who you're becoming. It's this gap that tears you apart, and at the same time, transforms you, because it allows no distraction. It forces you to be with yourself, to feel everything, to face everything, to listen to your soul without filters. And that's where true spirituality begins. not in eternal peace, but in real presence. Presence in the face of discomfort, presence in the face of not knowing, presence in the face of pain, without running away from it. And maybe, deep down, that's the only answer you need right now. Don't run away. Don't numb yourself. Don't try to skip steps. Stay. Listen. Because the root of your emptiness may be the very soil where your new consciousness is germinating. If this made sense to you, comment here. I allow myself to cross the void with awareness, because just by putting it into words, you begin to free yourself, and there is strength in your vulnerability. There is healing in your courage to feel what no one sees. What no one told you is that light, when it arrives without direction, can also be a labyrinth. Yes, you asked for it, prayed for it, walked toward it like someone crossing the night waiting for dawn, and it came. But what you didn't expect is that, instead of showing you a clear path, this light would reveal everything hidden beneath your emotional carpets. It didn't come as immediate relief, like a warm embrace that comforts you. It came as a revelation, and revelations aren't always gentle. The pain you feel now is not a sign of failure. It's not proof that you're regressing or doing something wrong. It's the direct consequence of facing the truth. And truth, when touched by the light, has nowhere to hide. That's why you feel this weight, this discomfort. Because the light opens wide, illuminates, and forces you to look with the eyes of your soul at what you may have avoided your entire life. This is the hidden key. Understanding that the pain of awakening comes not from darkness, but from light. Because when you were in darkness, you still had excuses. You could still blame others, the past, fate. You could still be distracted by the noises of the world. But the light allows no distraction. It silences everything. And in this silence, you hear, you feel, you perceive things that were hidden even from yourself. True awakening isn't made of certainties. It's made of loss. Loss of illusions, of characters, of ideas you've created about who you are. And what hurts isn't just what's gone, but everything you still try to hold on to, even though you know it no longer makes sense. Because you've learned that healing is about achieving something, but true healing is letting go, releasing control, including over the very idea of healing. Yes, that sounds strange, because everything inside you wants to understand, organize, and name the process. But the soul doesn't work that way. The soul wants you to unlearn, to let go of logic, the fast pace, the need for results, to let things blossom in their own time. And the right time, almost always, isn't your time. The light calls you to surrender, a surrender that isn't passivity but trust, a surrender that requires you not only to accept the pain, but to allow yourself to be transformed by it. And that's scary, because it hurts to lose control. It hurts to look within and realize that there are layers of you that still resist, that are still afraid, that still want to guarantee a happy ending before going through the process. But there's no happy ending without crossing the shadow. And the light, however beautiful it may seem, will illuminate that shadow until you embrace it, until you stop fighting what you feel, until you understand that pain isn't the problem. The problem is resistance. The problem is the fear of feeling, the fear of being vulnerable, the fear of admitting that no matter how spiritual you consider yourself, there are still days when everything falls apart inside. And that's okay. Because true spirituality isn't about living in constant peace. It's about being whole even in war. It's about staying present when everything inside you wants to run away. It's about recognizing that a cycle is happening, and that your only task is to allow it. Allow the fall. Allow the silence. Allow the pause. Rumi said, "Become the sky. Blow with the wind. Melt in the summer season. Empty yourself." And perhaps you are being called to do just that. Empty yourself, because the soul can only be filled with the new when you let go of the old. But letting go of the old isn't just about letting go of people or situations. It's about letting go of beliefs, certainties, and ideas you held about yourself. It's about making space. And making space also means facing the discomfort of emptiness. You still try to control the pace of your healing. You still hope to feel better in a few days. You still want quick answers, clear signs, guarantees. But spiritual light doesn't work with guarantees. It works with trust. It asks you to walk even when there's no path, to breathe even when everything seems suffocating, to trust even when the silence seems deafening. And this is where many get lost, because the spiritualized ego wants to feel special, enlightened, and wise. But the soul just wants you to be true. And being true means admitting that you're tired, confused, and afraid. Being true means stopping acting. Stop pretending you understand everything. Stop hiding your doubts behind pretty phrases. Because the key isn't more knowledge, it's more presence, more surrender, more listening. It's accepting that perhaps you're not here to master spirituality, but to be mastered by it, to be molded, polished, dissolved, and recreated. And this doesn't happen without pain. It doesn't happen without emptiness. It doesn't happen without that feeling that everything you were is crumbling. But what's crumbling isn't you. It's what no longer serves you. It's what you built as protection, and now needs to be left behind. And leaving behind, even when we know it's necessary, is a mourning process, a sacred mourning process, an internal process that can't be rushed, nor compared to anyone else's, because your soul has a unique rhythm, and respecting that rhythm is the greatest act of love you can offer yourself right now. You're not late, you're not wrong, you're in the middle of the process, and it's in this middle that the quiet magic happens. When everything seems still on the outside, but something deep is moving on the inside. You're being rebuilt. But first, you need to deconstruct. You need to let go of control. Let go of even the idea that you're already healed. Because true healing has no end. If any of this resonated with you, write it down here. I let go of control and trust the unseen. This simple phrase can be your bridge through what you're feeling right now. And sometimes all the soul needs is permission to move on. Perhaps today you're experiencing exactly this confusion, a state where everything that held you back no longer exists, yet you still feel a weight you can't name. You left those who hurt you. You cut ties that drained your energy. You walked away from toxic environments. You broke cycles that seemed eternal. And that took strength. It took courage. It took breaking promises you made to yourself when you didn't yet know what self-love was. You pushed yourself to the limit for people who didn't know how to see you, hear you, or value you. But at some point, something inside you said, enough, and then you chose yourself. You reconnected with spirituality. You began listening to your soul, following signs, paying attention to the silence. You sought refuge in Rumi's words, found solace in phrases that seemed to speak exactly to you. You learned to meditate, to breathe consciously, to trust the invisible a little more, and this gave you meaning for a time. It was like finding water in the middle of the desert, a relief after so much accumulated pain. You finally began to love yourself, to look at yourself with less judgment, to recognize how much you endured in silence, how much you endured out of fear of loss, and you realized that your value was never in the other. It was, always, in your own presence. It was a process, long, silent, often lonely, but you came this far. And because of that, what you feel now is even more confusing. Because even after all this, you still feel out of place, like you're on the margins of life, like there's a place everyone seems to be going, except you. It's not loneliness in the traditional sense. It's a more subtle sense of not belonging, a feeling of being between worlds, of no longer being who you were, but also not yet being who you're becoming. Before the pain held you captive, it was clear, palpable. It had a name, a face. You knew where it came from. You knew where it hurt. But now, what paralyzes you is no longer the pain. It's the emptiness, an open space within you that is no longer filled by distractions, by unresolved relationships, by other people's expectations. This emptiness is different. It doesn't hurt, but it bothers. It doesn't wound, but it provokes. It's a silent call to trust. Trust in what? That's the burning question. Trust in something that hasn't arrived yet, in something you can't see, can't understand, but feel. Trust that this place you're in now, even though it seems dark and silent, is necessary, that this not knowing, this not feeling of belonging isn't a sign you're lost. It's a sign you're in transition. Think about everything that's changed within you lately. What once made sense no longer serves you. Old dreams seem small. Shallow conversations bore you. The people who once occupied your heart now seem distant. Even your own desires have changed. You feel more sensitive, more intuitive, more connected to the invisible, but at the same time, less connected to the world. This is normal. It's part of the rebirth process. And rebirth is silent. It doesn't come with parties, lights, or red carpets. It comes with silence, with sleepless nights, with moments of doubt, with that strange feeling of being in a place where no one else seems to reach you. It's as if you've taken a step forward, and now you don't know how to go back. And indeed you don't, because going back is no longer an option, and moving forward still has no ground to stand on. This is the sacred space where the soul is honed, where you learn to trust without seeing, to keep walking even without direction, where you understand that you no longer need to fill every void, that there is wisdom in not rushing and not understanding and simply remaining. The soul is in no hurry. It needs space. And that's the space you're feeling now. A space that feels like solitude, but is fertile soil. And in this soil, something is being planted. Something new. Something that can't be built with the old bricks. Something that demands a new attitude from you. No longer that of a survivor, but that of someone who has chosen to live consciously. Someone who is no longer content with emotional crumbs. Someone who prefers true silence to superficial company. Someone who understands that emptiness isn't absence, it's preparation. So, even if everything inside you wants answers, learn to listen to what's not said. Learn to be with yourself without trying to run away. Because it's in this space of not belonging that true belonging is born. Not to the world, but to yourself. And when you belong to yourself, no place feels strange anymore. No absence hurts as much. No wait is in vain. Maybe you don't see it yet, but this phase you're experiencing is a gift. An uncomfortable gift, I know, but a gift nonetheless, because it's teaching you to be whole, to be your own home, to be your own light. It's teaching you that the silence of the soul isn't the end. It's the beginning of a deeper listening. A listening where finally you stop looking for answers outside and begin to feel within. If any of this has crossed your mind, write it here. I am the soil where my new soul is being born. Because sometimes all you need is to recognize that you are exactly where you're supposed to be. And the simple act of putting that into words is already part of flourishing. You are not lost. Even if you feel adrift, even if everything around you is changing faster than you can keep up, even if the silence within you grows louder and louder, you are not lost. What is happening is something much deeper than it seems. You are simply in a space between your old self and the soul that is being born. And this space is not a mistake. It is a necessary interval. It is a spiritual womb, an invisible uterus, where something within you is being sacredly gestated. And the birth of a new consciousness, however enlightened, also hurts. Make no mistake, the feeling of not belonging, the constant restlessness, the emptiness that seems to echo even in achievements that once made sense. All of this isn't failure. It's transition. Your soul is shedding old structures. And like any transition process, it requires courage. The courage to let go. The courage to look back with gratitude and move forward without knowing exactly where you're going. The courage to not numb yourself halfway through. Rumi wrote, "Don't be satisfied with stories, how things were for others. Reveal your own legend." And perhaps that's what's happening now. Your old story no longer serves you. That script you followed for so long, based on fears, needs, inherited expectations, is being dissolved. But the new story hasn't been written yet, and it's in that in-between that you find yourself, in a space of silence where the words haven't yet arrived. In an invisible field where the old has been undone but the new has not yet taken shape. And this is where the shift in consciousness lies. That precise point where you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What's emerging through me?" This simple shift in perspective transforms everything, because the focus shifts from fear to presence. It shifts from self-punishment to acceptance. It shifts from the frantic search for answers to the mystery of living consciously, even when everything seems uncertain. True spirituality doesn't promise easy paths. It invites you into yourself, to the center of your own chaos, your own emptiness. It calls you to traverse the emotional landscapes you've avoided for so long. And that's where most people give up, because the ego screams. Fear hits. The rational mind demands logic, direction, explanation. But the soul whispers. It doesn't give you maps. It gives you intuition. It doesn't show you the destination. It invites you to walk even without seeing the next step. Maybe you're at that exact point right now, a point where everything familiar no longer makes sense, but where the new hasn't yet arrived. A point where you feel more sensitive, deeper, more present, but also more alone. A point where you can no longer hide from yourself. And that, as uncomfortable as it may seem, is a gift. Because it's in this raw honesty that you find your true strength. Not the strength of those who control, but the strength of those who surrender. You're learning to live without crutches, to truly listen to yourself, to trust your own inner voice, even when it challenges everything you thought you knew. This is spiritual maturity. This is true presence. This is silent evolution. And it happens when you least expect it, when you simply stop fighting what you feel and start letting it transform you. The emptiness you feel isn't actually absence. It's preparation. It's a cleared field, waiting for the seeds of the new version that's emerging within you. And the more you try to fill this void with distractions, haste, and forced certainties, the further you move away from true transformation. Because this new you, this freer, more intuitive, more awakened soul, won't be born under pressure. It will be born in silence, in the right time, in the space where you finally accept being in between what was and what will be. And in this in-between, a lot happens. Small insights reveal themselves. A new perspective on old pains. A new way of listening. A desire to live differently. Lighter. More conscious. More connected to the invisible. To the sacred. To what cannot be explained, but only felt. This is the moment you stop forcing yourself to fit in. You're tired of adjusting. You're tired of repeating patterns. You're tired of pretending to understand when, in fact, you're tired of understanding so much. Now all you want is to feel something true, something that doesn't depend on others, something that comes from within. And this something has already begun, even if it doesn't yet have a name, even if it doesn't yet have a color or shape. It has already begun, because you've started allowing yourself to. You're closer than you think, not to a destination, but to an inner revelation. To that point where pain gives way to wisdom, where confusion begins to dissolve into clarity, where silence becomes sacred, where emptiness ceases to be a threat and becomes a cradle. So, even if it still hurts, even if you still cry in secret, even if you feel off balance at times, keep going. Because what's emerging within you is greater than any painful phase you've ever experienced. And you'll realize at some point that this feeling lost was exactly what put you on the right path, because you're not losing yourself, you're freeing yourself. If this internal change has already begun within you right here, I accept emptiness as part of my blossoming, because sometimes all your soul needs is to know that you won't give up on it now. If you've stuck around this far, it's because something inside you resonated with this message. Maybe it was the silence you also feel. Maybe it was the emptiness no one understands. Or maybe it was that part of your soul that, even tired, still wants to keep going. And if this touched you in some way, it's because this journey is yours too. Subscribe to the channel if you too feel like you're walking in the dark, but refuse to stop. Here, each video is a part of this journey, and with each step, you'll remember, you're not alone. Leave your like if this content welcomed you, touched you, made you see something new within yourself. Sometimes a simple gesture confirms to your heart that it has been seen. And now, keep diving. The next video is already appearing on the screen. It is the continuation of your own quest, because the journey is not over. She just started, silently,